For as long as we can remember, the so-called organic produce that is the music we listen to has been lab-made specifically to suit our needs. Often we are left confused as to whether girl power was sprung up in the hearts and minds of 12-year-olds, or whether it was coldly brewed by a record company as they shook in just the right amount of ginger and sporty spice into a recipe for success. K-pop, with its glorious fashion and flawless dance moves, has swept teens off their feet across the world within the last decade. Since their debut album in 2013, BTS has risen to become one of the most influential bands in South Korean culture. It's well known that these bands are carefully created and curated by record companies to appeal to teens across the country. But looking at the sugar-coated product, it begs the question, is this a bad thing? The band's name, BTS, translates to literally Bulletproof Boy Scouts, the concept being here that the teenagers will not be shot down by the expectations and stereotypes thrown at them. Of course, the idea that teens will stand up against stereotypes has been born afresh with every generation. What teenage boys are rallying against in 2021 is the expectation to be just that, boys, in the way we have always taught them to be. The fact that BTS is helping to crack open that mysterious egg of what modern masculinity is, in itself is a small revolution. At the start of the band's fame, they were dressed in dark colour palettes with an aggressive tone to the music and militaristic aesthetic, but coming into the summer of 2020, they have progressed. Their look has softened, giving them a harder job standing strong against patriarchal criticism and gender roles. Although their look has remained distinctly 1980s in feel, it is now providing nostalgia for Saturday afternoons watching Miami Vice rather than rap battles on MTV. This feeling has evoked a trend of young girls seeking soft colours and softened edges in their poster boys. To my mind, this acceptance of sweetness being represented more in fashion can only be positive. This means that teenage girls in Korea and perhaps beyond might be open to a less aggressive dynamic in what they expect from their own relationships, should they choose to pursue them with boys. The emergence of this is bleeding into Western fashion, with the king of British boy bands, Harry Styles, being featured in Vogue's December 2020 cover in a delightful pastel blue dress by Gucci. The brand verged into neo-romantic in their tour collaboration with Florence Welch. Florence has always been seen as the relatable witchy fantasy of many a preteen girl seeking to find someone who understands what they're going through. However, what is so fabulous about someone like Harry Styles taking a gender-bending, mysterious persona is that girls who love Harry will start to look for aspects of him in the relationships they tentatively step into. This feeds into a general trend of less aggression expected from heterosexual relationships, which benefits everyone. In previous years, masculinity has been so rigid in what it expects of men and what heterosexual women are allowed to find attractive in them. Back in the early 2010s, there seemed to be less of a threat. The fantasy of a real man was a physically strong, aggressive hero, fresh from the fight. In 2020, with a global pandemic and a political climate that seems to dance along a razor's edge, our fantasies have become the desire for kindness, kind to the soul and kind to the eyes. In one of their most recent music videos, Dynamite, BTS display a late 70s, early 80s dreamland where the Teletubby backdrop gives one the sense of being welcomed into the resting place of ABBA and Barney the dinosaur all at once. What is so interesting to wonder is whether this is in response to a demand for comfort and compassion from a teenage girl audience, or whether it's been handed to them through advertising. In reality, it doesn't seem to matter. Either way, it's all progress. The wants and desires of teenage girls have been mocked and brushed off as ridiculous ever since the 1950s, when the market of teens was accepted as existing. Elvis was seen as a rhinestone-covered threat to morality. One of the greatest cinematic masterpieces of the 1990s, Titanic, was tossed aside, deemed frivolous because teenage girls had an interest in Leonardo DiCaprio's luscious hair, as well as historical events. Twilight and Taylor Swift got the same treatment. Used as a benchmark of ridicule rather than appreciated for how lucrative they were, their power ignored. Finally, in 2020, huge businesses like the record industries of South Korea are not only taking an interest in the dreams of the teenage girl, but have decided to put their money where their mouth is in terms of taking a sledgehammer to gender roles. Yes, the industry is problematic and plastic, but the demand for softness has created a plastic sledgehammer of money that's slowly destroying the contrite gender box.